All right. Well, welcome back to another episode of the Create the Ripple podcast. My guest today is a woman by the name of Coco Dee. She's a Tahitian-born, French-speaking, straight-talking Aussie and self-made millionaire. She's also a women's wealth advocate. So I'm super excited to talk to her today. Coco has a podcast of her own, and it's called Keep the Change and has been accepted as a Forbes business writer. She coins herself as an Astro economist, and as an intuitive wealth creator. From corporate career to self-made millionaire in her 20s to taking over her failing family business and learning how to come back from losing it all because of ego and guilt in her 30s. Business is her bread and butter, but her lifeblood is seeing incredible women grow in their business journey and overcome their old stories and paradigms. If you're looking for a place to bring back the work to the woo and make the inner work the everyday, grab yourself a carton of chocolate coconut water and get to know her. I'm excited to get to know her today. Coco is now not only a mother who's living her dream life in Bali with her family, but also the owner and shareholder of multiple businesses. Her mission is for women and young girls all over the world to gain basic financial literacy and create wealth beyond their wildest dreams. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Create the Ripple podcast. I'm your host, Candace Smiley. Here we trust the ningle and we tell the truth. This is a podcast. We are looking to have conversations that matter, conversations that take courage to engage in, where we cut through the noise that exists online to bring you incredible content, amazing speakers, and stories to inspire you to live your best, listen to yourself, and tell the truth of who you are and who you just might become. All right. Well, Coco, thank you so much for joining me on the show today. For those of you who are a Patreon subscriber, you know that, of course, you got to hear the intro and our girlfriends getting to know each other chat. Thank you so much to those of you who support this channel. But without any further ado, Coco, let's give people a little bit about who you are, what you're about, maybe off the bio page. You know what I mean? Like, what's the real deal?
What's the real deal? That's a really good question. I am, look, I love business. I don't like small talk. I just love to
Mm,
get into the nitty-gritty. Let's talk
mm,
about the things that actually move you, make you happy, make you angry,
mm,
frustrate the hell out of you. And let's make lots of money, and let's talk about the times that we made lots of money, and let's talk about the times that we also lost lots of money, because a
mm.
lot of people cover one side and not the other. And so I'm just the straight talking girl who I tend to be pretty blunt.
Mm.
But I find that that's probably missing out there too. So
Yes.
a lot of people find me refreshing, or you're just going to absolutely not find me refreshing, and I'm not your cup of tea. And that's okay too.
I think we're going to have a pretty wonderful day because one of the things I really like to be in general, but especially on the podcast, is slightly irreverent to conversations I think just sort of need to be poked a little bit. And the finances is definitely
Mm.
one. Anybody who's been following my story, my listeners for sure know this, but there was a time in my life when I made a really dumb decision in terms of life partner, and he left me and the country with over $350,000 worth of debt. And that was just one of the small debts that he left behind. However, that means at a point in my life when I should have been, really getting some traction in my financial life, I was like, zero was a good number to see because there was a lot more
Mm.
negatives than anything else. And I like to talk about that because it led me to, I'm an essentialist now. I live in a tiny home. I love thrifting, and all of those things have come about originally because I didn't really want them to, but now I love it, the mindset, the ideas, and all that kind of stuff. But one of the things I'm really comfortable talking about is making mistakes in your finances, and also what it takes to fix them, because it is
Yes.
possible, and you are not defined in terms of your worth based on what's in your bank account. I was always advocating, I'm like, look, I made a dumb decision in terms of life partner, but I'm actually really good with money. And so I'd like to kind of start there because I know part of your story is that, you've made a ton of money. And then you also mentioned in your bio, there's a bit about guilt. And I was like, oh,
Mm.
let's dive into that for a minute
Yeah.
because ego and guilt got in the way.
Whew. Totally. Totally. So I've been in business since I'm 36 now, and I've been in business since I was 18.
Mhm.
And I was a multi-millionaire by the time I was 23, 24. through property, as that was the vehicle. For those who probably can tell, I'm from Australia. And that's where my property portfolio was. And I reached a level that no one else in my life had reached at that point in time. My friends were still living at home. So I had never really, I wasn't in the right circles essentially. And so I got very cocky. If I can do all of this by the time I'm 23, 24, what the hell are the 60-year-olds doing complaining about money? Yeah, like, come on, guys. It's not, it was very bad. And so then, married my high school sweetheart, did all those things. And at the age of 27, was like, this isn't really for me anymore. And that, you Saturn return, and it was massive for me. Divorce, left my corporate career, took over the businesses that we had. At the same time, a few properties in our property portfolio were not performing. And so I feel, I look back now consciously, and I could see that my subconscious was the one at work, and my conscious mind didn't know. And so I know that I felt guilty that I made so much money. I didn't know how to relate to other people. It's easy for me to create what I had already created. So let's just burn it to the ground, because I know how to get to that, but I didn't know how to push through the ceiling. Now, obviously, if you had told me that at the time, I would have told you to go and, find someone else to speak to in a nice way. But that's what happened. And then the second time around, when I lost multi-millions again. So, you can make millions again. Like, you've made it once, you can do it again and again, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
This is fine. I've got this under control. But instead of taking time out for myself to kind of reevaluate, I was in this spinning wheel of, oh my goodness, if I stop now, I'll never be able to start again. Real lack mentality of not being able to trust myself that I could recreate it. And so I was like, I have to work the 16-hour days, 7 days a week to do all the things. And that's when I started realizing and getting intuition, but I still wasn't really, really trusting my intuition. And it's not until I lost millions a second time at the age of 32 that I realized my one big mistake to all that loss was that I didn't listen to my intuition. So it's like the signs just got clearer and clearer. And so now that's why I'm very passionate about women and wealth and building wealth through your intuition. And the thing is, we're told that it's not black and white. You can't explain it. You get that ping and you're like, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to do this. And people say, but why? I don't know. That's just what we're going to do. And I know I tried that many times. And because I was working with males, they wanted the black and white. Now, it's not their fault. It's my fault. I should have stood up and said, well, no, this is what we're doing. And if you want to do something else, then I'm out. But I didn't. And so, these series of events have taught me to trust myself more, to be more in tune with my intuition. And even when it doesn't make sense, 3 years down the track, it's going to make sense. So just do it.
I love that. I mean, that's the whole premise behind the podcast. Trust the niggle, tell the truth. And for me, that's in, any of the mistakes I made financially or otherwise were because I didn't listen to the niggle. It's never convenient. And I tell people that all the time. I call it a niggle because it's always inconvenient. It's either going to push you to be better and you're not ready to grow, because growth only happens outside of your comfort zone, or you realize that the plan that you were on, the path that you were heading, is not what you need to do. And it requires a pivot. And that usually requires conversations. And like you say, you have a lot of times the male energy in your life is like, what are we doing? Why are we changing? And I'm like, I can't even tell you that. I can't tell you why I need to make this decision. I need to invest in this rather than this. And why, and you're right, it doesn't show up until later. And so many people, we're not taught how to trust that, how to listen for it. Some people have totally lost. I mean, I was years ago when I started listening, I was like, what do I even sound like? What does my voice sound like, feel like, taste like, smell like? What is that? What is that to me? And then once you know it, you have to tell yourself the truth of it, which is very hard to do. But if you can tell yourself, it's so much easier to tell the rest of the world, hey, we're making this change.
Totally.
This isn't working for me. So I love that you say that. And it's probably why I got so excited when I read your bio, is I'm like, oh, you apply this idea to your finances.
Yeah, it took me a while, but I got there in the end.
I love that you're like, so I made this mistake and then I did again. I made this mistake and I did it again. And I'm just like, this lack mentality, do you find, because it's one of my Achilles heel, like every level, I'm like, where is the lack hanging out in this level? How is it
Oh,
going to show up? Right? Like it's impacted so many of my decisions, friendships, relationships, you name it. That scarcity mentality of I've had it all, I'll lose it all. What if I can't redo it? What if I, like that what if? Talk to me about that.
we are a generation born, so we're the second generation born from, world wars.
Mm,
And so it's epigenetically wide in us. And some of us are still in our 40s, actually, the first generation from that, depending on how old your parents are.
mhm.
And so we're still living through that mindset of, if I even find myself saying it to my daughter, don't, eat all that food, don't waste. I'm like, she's not hungry. If she's like, don't force feed her. What are you doing? And so I catch myself
Mhm.
repeating things from my parents, or I grew up in a household where if you lose your, I was going to say jumper, that's very Aussie, but if you lose your sweater, or is it sweater? Yeah. If you lose your sweater, if you lose your lunchbox, I'm not buying you another one. You're going to have to deal with it. And I find myself thinking that to myself, or I have a friend who
Mm.
laughs at me because I have things that I've had for 15 years. And she's like, who has 15 years? And I'm like, well, I do. Because if you lose it, you don't buy it again. You don't buy another one. So you
That's so
have to
good.
catch yourself. And so
Mhm.
what I have given myself recently is permission.
Mm.
I'm like, I am who I am. I have the programming that I have. And so when I catch myself sounding like my mother, my grandmother, my father, my grandfather, my uncle, my auntie, I just give myself permission to reframe. And so I'll say to my daughter, I'm so sorry, Ariana. I didn't mean that. What I actually meant was this. Or if I say it to my partner or to a friend, I'm like, that's not actually mine. It's permission, because we're so embarrassed. We're so embarrassed to, we like to own the ego so big. I just said that. I can't take it back. Well, you can.
Yeah. Mhm.
You can. And so that's the permission that I've really given myself over the last few years, is to, constant permission to reframe. Or, I say control, alt, delete. I didn't mean that. I'm just going to say something that I actually meant, because that wasn't
Let you
mine.
do this. So what do you say to the woman who's like, I want that life, I can't have that life, how do I get that life? What do you say to her?
My wanting to live in Southeast Asia has been about 15 years in the making.
Mm.
So, the life I have today is the the seeds that I planted 15 years ago. And so I always say to everyone, whatever your life looks like today is the result of your decisions 5 years ago. And it's so hard to swallow, and it's so hard to tell yourself that and to admit that that's exactly how it is. I look back at my life and I look at where I am and where I've been. And, you know, I used to be the ultimate shit magnet. I've just closed a chapter of shit, because I just attracted shit after shit after shit after shit. And I've literally just closed that out recently. And I felt a massive change, and I never thought that I would, in the shift of my energy. And it's because of all those little seeds that I've planted, and the ones that I decided weren't for me. And I just chucked them out and poisoned that little area, grow back and do all those things. And I want you to know, firstly, that whoever's life you're looking to and thinking, I wish that that was my life, or I wish that I was them, or how lucky for them.
Mhm.
It's easy for them because da da da.
Mm.
You can have this too. It's definitely the amount of inner work that I do, and the amount of coaching, mentoring, and the amount of people in my life that call me out on my shit. No one in my life strokes my ego. No one in my life tells me how amazing I am. It's more like, hey, you said that you didn't want to do that, and now you're doing it, and you're really going against what you said. So, it's taken me years to get here. Now it doesn't have to take years. I'm just a slow learner, but I feel as though we can actually have everything that we want. It's just, one, how much do you trust? And it's taken me so long to trust. So long to trust. And now I see, through liquidations, through bankruptcies, through loss, literally, I've lost like $7 to $8 million. And in the moment, it feels like, but now I look back and I'm like, they were my greatest the greatest moments of my life. I would not know the things that I know without those things today. I would not be speaking to you today about these things. And I 100% trust. So let me give you an example, because I love stories and examples. We moved to Bali in July this year, and we have a lease. We just got a lease for 12 months. And in Bali, you have to pay up front for your leases. So, it was $40,000 up front for this house that we're living in, fully furnished, all the things. Yes, Bali's not as cheap as it used to be. Long story short is, in the last week, things have changed. I've got 6 businesses. I'm building stuff back in Oz, all these things. And it seems as though my intuition this week was like, I think you're going to have to go back to Oz. I think you're just going to have to go back to Oz in Feb. And I think, the childcare is nearly ready to be built. And I was like, in the past, I would have spiraled in, we've just spent $40,000 on rent. We're just doing this. We only just got set up. We've only been here 6 months. And what's the point of moving here? The visa cost me this much. And I would have gone like in a spiral of, well, that was just a waste of time and money. We've, I've never been so sick in my life since I've been in Bali. It's like been the best adventure for our family. But at the same time, there's been downsides. There's equal parts, upsides and downsides. And now we're in a place where we're looking at potentially moving back home to finish out some business things, which means that we may not be here for until September next year. And I'm okay with it. And I trust. And the other day, like yesterday, I had someone that I met at the park through kids playing together. He's like, oh, I might want to take over your lease. Literally didn't like, I haven't put it out there. It's just been one conversation. And so the more that you trust, and the more that we don't go into this spiral of what, if you know that you're making the decisions right now for you that feel good and that are in the best, what you want right now, we feel like there's so much judgment around, I can't change my mind. I have to finish what I started. I say all these things from experience, guys. So I'm not like having a go. I know because I've been there. Can't change my mind. Have to finish what I started. Money is energy. I grew up and I have been like this person who suffocates money. I'm like, I have to hold on to it. I was the biggest tight ass. I was married to a Sicilian. I mean, that says enough, right? So like we held on to our money so much because we were like, we're savers and this is like, you can't let it go. But what I realized is the more that I suffocated and held on to it, the more it stuffed up my brain in terms of my relationship with money. And then I was able to create less, because it's like a room that has no air in it. It becomes stuffy and moldy and gross. And so money is like energy. And so when it knows that you trust in it, and I'm not saying like go out and spend frivolously, but when we're in that energetic exchange with, it's like exercise, it's like eating, it's all of that. It's just that it's like air into a room. And so when I think about now what I did to bring my family out here and to have a different experience, because trust me, I'm married to a Cancerian. So if I can get him over here, you can get anyone over here. He's a country boy, like doesn't like it, change. And so I know for me, for so long, I heard this thing of like, just trust, be in the energy flow. And I was like, what the hell does that even mean? What are you talking about? Woo stuff. Talk to me in practical. And it's not until I started to let go, and I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to do what's right. I'm not going to do what I'm being told to. Can be really honest, I've only really started this in the last 12 to 18 months. And slowly, and even my husband's like, oh my God, you're like the person I married, all those years ago. And I'm like, yeah, I feel like I'm coming back to me.
And one of my favorite words, and this is from, back in the day when I was losing everything and also went through some tough stuff financially, was when it says approved, when you like tap the card and it's like the purchase is approved. That is one of my favorite words. And some people have these words where they say wealth all the time. I'm like, for me, it's approved. It's approved.
That's cool.
There's money there. It's approved. And it's interesting how there's got to be this flow. And typically when I'm feeling, even now, tight financially, a contract changes suddenly, or, the float shifts, because it does. And I'm just like,
It does.
that first response. And then I'm like, no. And one of the best ways for me to get out of that is to go and pay a bill, to go for pay for something, not spend, because spend, the energy of that word, the etymology of that word is to waste. When you spend money, you are wasting money. So I'm very conscious when I say I'm investing time with my kids. I'm not spending time with my kids. I'm investing time with my kids.
I love that
Right?
reframe.
It's just, and so then I'll think, okay, who can I invest in today? What can I invest in? And it can be as simple as, you know what? I need to get out of the house and I'm going to go to the local grocery store, the local greenhouse, and I'm going to buy cucumbers and tomatoes and I'm going to make a gigantic green salad for tonight. That's me investing in the local economy. That's me saying, even though I'm feeling fear and scarcity today, I'm going to allow the money to flow through me. And that's been a really fun exercise for me. Or I'll go look and say, what bills are due this month? And can I move some money right now? Am I able to do that? Big
The
or
work
small?
never ends, whether it's in your business, whether it's in your household, whether it's
Yes.
on yourself.
Mhm.
It's always there. And we have, our Western world, it's all about these to-do lists. And what's been really fascinating about living in Bali is the stark difference in work ethics between Westerners and the Indonesian. And I found myself having a lot of judgment towards them around that. That's a discussion for a different day, but it's just like, sometimes it'll getting us out of our environment to see how other cultures live. It doesn't mean they're right and we're wrong, or vice versa, but it's a really good reminder of being grateful with what you've been given and what you're creating. So for me, being here and having the lifestyle and having the help was one of the big reasons why I wanted to move here. And also just the weather. Even though I live in Queensland, the weather here is just amazing. And so, I grew up on a tropical island, then in Australia, epic for me. But I wanted to talk to your reframe and also to the relationship that people have with money. When some of us are struggling with money, we forget that if the car breaks down or the fridge shits itself or whatever, it's like somehow the car gets fixed or somehow the fridge gets replaced or repaired. And yet we can't simulate that in the things that we say we want. Over the last couple of weeks, I've hosted a free container, and I've been playing a money game with the participants. And it's been very interesting to see the reaction of this money game. And during this money game, it's a bit bigger than what I'm going to explain it now, but simply put, I give them checks every day, figuratively speaking, but it's to help with their mindset story. And so, it goes from $1,000 and we went right up to $8.8 million. And to see the reality shifting for women around that is that we don't allow ourselves to expand bigger. So we have these stories, get richer, and we have all of these things. But then once we're actually given the money, we don't know what to do with it because we don't think beyond the broken fridge and the broken car. And again, you may be listening, being like, well, it's all well and good for you, Coraline. But I wasn't brought up with a silver spoon. My parents didn't make much money, that we were given everything. And their priority was freedom. So we traveled a lot. We didn't have some other things, but I never felt like I went without. But I just wanted to share that because I'm not a traveler. And so I think when you can expand your mind, and so then you think beyond the $2,000 that you need for the car or for the stuff like that.
I love that money game. That was something I did back in the day, especially post losing everything, which was very challenging. And I would mentally deposit, $100 in my bank account and then double that, right? So then 100 became 200, 200 became 400. It was so much fun. And, halfway through the month, I'd already bought the car and paid for this and paid for that. And I'm like, well, in a few weeks, I'll pay for the house. And I was like, well, now what? Like, and that was really interesting to realize, like you say, how limited my thinking was.
Yeah. And also what I found in that pattern, when the checks got to the millions, the women were like, I'm going to retire my family, like my mom and dad. And I'm like, we have these fantasies that create nightmares in our life. When you retire your husband, your parents, they lose their purpose. So it'll be good for the first 3 to 6 months, if that, because, it's all exciting. But then we don't realize how long the days are. We dream of chilling out on the beach and doing nothing. But I'm sorry, guys, that's just complete bullshit. It's so boring. I don't care like what your human design is. I don't care yours. I don't care. We're humans and we're meant to be. Like, why are we where we are today? Because the human mind continues to evolve. That's who we are. Why do we have electricity? Why do we have running water? Why can we build bridges and all? Why do we have airplanes? So I challenge you, the listener, to really think beyond, because we don't think beyond. And then we wonder why I'm not Elon Musk, or we wonder why I'm not Richard Branson with all the cash in the bank, because we don't think beyond. Once I have the car, once I have, enough money, most of us don't even think about retirement. And anyone in our age bracket should be thinking about funding their own retirement, because our government will not be able to give you any pension. Anyway, I'm the queen of tangents. I've just gone on to about 20.
Well, and you and I talked about before the show, we're definitely going to have you back on because talking about money is really important. I love on this show, I don't necessarily want to leave people with an impression of what my opinions are, although I do speak to them. What I would love for my listeners to do is think. That is
Exactly.
really the intention here, of the Create the Ripple, is to have people start to think so they can make up their own minds, which means maybe they're inspired, I hope, to go and click on your show. I hope they're inspired to go and figure out what programs you're offering and all that kind of stuff, because education, this idea of making up your own decisions, even if your ideas are different than mine, that's great. Let's at least have an intelligent conversation about them, which is awesome. So to that end, since we're going to have you back on the show again to talk more about this, what is the one thing you'd like to leave my listener with today?
I have a couple, but I'm going to pick the
You can
one that just
tangent away.
came
Go ahead.
through. Yeah, tangent away. She already knows me. The biggest thing there's two things. The biggest thing that I always struggled with, and I hear so many women say, is I'm too old. I can't start again. Or I don't have time. There's always time. We'll always make time for the things that we love. And when I actually think about it, I used to create my goals really like I'd give myself 6 weeks, 3 months, 6 months. But now I give myself 20 years. And so if I have a day, I've been sick this week with, MSG poisoning, I think it's okay. The week in 20, like out of 20 years is nothing. Whereas when I gave myself 3 months, it gave me conniptions because I was like, I'm never going to achieve my goal. So you have time. You have time. It's literally coming from someone who grew up with a mother who was like, oh my God, it's 12 p.m. The day's over. The day's over. And so I've had to really rewire that. And the other thing is back yourself. Back yourself. Like, we do not fight with mother's intuition. If a mother says something about their child, it's not, no one questions it. But if we use that same intuition for our life, for our money, for our career, for our business, we're called crazy. And we know because we've seen for many, many, many years, women, witches, they weren't witches, they just had their intuition, burnt at the stake, and it's still happening. And again, this is a tangent I'm going on, but we have been taught to suppress our intuition. You do not need to justify yourself to anybody. I know a lot of women who say to me, oh, I have to chat to my husband about that. And I get it, because you might have shared finances. But every time a woman says that to me, I break inside. I break inside because she's going to go to justify herself about what she feels is right for her and her family. And so my mission is about bringing that back to women, because the moment, obviously financial literacy is like my number one, but when you back yourself, the rest falls into place.
I can't agree more. It's an interesting conversation when you're advocating for yourself. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I think as women, and this is another tangent, so we're going to have you back on the show, is, we've grown up with this Disney idea, right? That we're supposed to have this knight in shining armor, and there is no knight in shining armor. And my life got infinitely better on a million different levels when I stopped waiting for Prince Charming. I stopped
Yeah.
bemoaning the fact that I had to rescue myself, because at first I was angry about that. I've been lied to my whole life subconsciously, right? Like, there is no Prince Charming. In fact, the guy I thought was Prince Charming left me in ruins, which I think is for a lot of people. And I had to get over being angry about it. And when I got to that point of radical responsibility, everything I have done where I'm at is entirely my fault. That's not to add guilt or blame or shame. That's an acknowledgement that
Yes.
took me from I'm a victim, I'm a martyr, I can never get forward, giving my power away, to, well, I fucked that up royally. But if I could fuck it up this bad, I can probably fix it. And the sooner I got to that point, man, oh man, then all of a sudden doors open for you. And I know there's tons of quotes about it, but that really hit me one day when I was literally bemoaning it. And it was like, when you make a decision, then providence moves too. And I have seen that every single time.
Yes.
So, girlfriend, it's your fault. Accept it, take responsibility for it, and watch the magic happen.
And I know we're trying to wrap up, but I just want to add
Go for
something.
it.
Is that, imagine when your child or someone or your friend comes to you, hey, I think we should go on this holiday and, it'd be really good for us. And, like, are you going to go on the holiday? No. Whereas if you're like, hey, I'm really feeling this holiday. Like, I know I've been really stressed with the family and I've been taking it all out on you guys. And I just need a couple of days for myself. And everyone's going to be like, go, mom, go. So again, like that's what it's a backing yourself. When you try and sell something to someone and you're sheepish and you're like, oh, I know he's going to say no. So I'm like, your energy affects everything, your people, your environment, the way everything responds to you. Again, why was I a shit magnet for 10 years? Because of my energy, because I didn't back myself, because of all the things, because of the ways that I was selling stuff, And so, yeah, I know we're trying to wrap up, so I'm just going to leave it there, but just be mindful of how you bring a message to someone. And would you find it convincing if you came to someone like that?
I could seriously talk to you for hours. So for any of my listeners who are falling in love with Coco, as I am, please go check out her podcast. We, of course, will have all the links for whatever she's up to in the comments down below in the description box.
Thanks, guys.